Yeah, so
So
it's
tell me
very
about
easy.
that.
You, the food processor, take all your basil, put it in, add the oil, let it get all mixed together in your food processor, and then put it into a glass jar and let it sit at least 48 hours. I let it go probably 3 days. I think about 3 days. And then I took one of my nut bags and I strained it through, like the finest one, and then
Yeah.
have the basil oil. Amazing.
Will
Absolutely.
it keep?
And like really
Will the
sweet.
oil keep?
Mine's in my refrigerator now for like a month.
Okay.
So that's, yeah, all these different
Well,
ways we can infuse our plants and our herbs into oils and things, and then be able to use them in the winter. Or take your basil and dry it very easily in like if there's any room in your house that's not very humid, just lay it out, let it dry unless you have a dehumidifier. I do a whole bunch of my herbs downstairs on the countertop
Oh,
with the dehumidifier on, or I have a dehydrator. But
Huh.
this way,
That's
everything
cool.
from the summer I get to carry over for the whole winter.
So, well, I can easily do that. I do have a basement room that has a dehumidifier in it. Runs about 48% humidity in that room.
Yeah, that would be
So-
great.
So you think I should, instead of making more pesto,
Well,
try
you can
one
make,
of the pesto
yeah, depending on
oil
how
and
much. If you make sauce and stuff in the wintertime, the dried basil right from the garden has so much more like of that burst of flavor in it. When you add
Okay.
it, it almost hydrates again rather than the store-bought stuff, which will never hydrate again.
So should I, if I'm gonna dry it, should I just like cut the whole stalk off and let the
Yeah, you
stalk
make
dry?
it easy. Yep, and then the leaves come off very easy. Then you just, at the
When-
end, when they're dry, you just brittle them. You just take them off and discard the stem.
Right, right, okay, so that's
Super
probably
simple.
the easiest thing to do with the extra.
You
Basil.
also you can take the oil or the you have an old ice cube tray, take the basil, the pesto after you make it and put it in an ice cube tray. And this way you have like single serves of it and frozen. And you just put it to a sauce or mix it in with pasta and it just melts. That's another
Right.
real easy one.
Right, so the other thing I've got a bunch of is chives.
Same thing. You could do, you could freeze it, you could
So
dry.
same thing, just cut it off.
Yep.
cut it off
I
and
haven't
dry
done
it?
that. I have to harvest now. Super, super easy. That dries very easily too.
Mhm.
And I
Have
actually,
you thought about doing chive oil?
I haven't
mean-
done chive, but it's probably really, really good because that
I don't know why it wouldn't be.
And
Yeah.
chop it up before you dry it. It's a lot easier to chop before, like just chop it into tiny little pieces and then dry
Okay,
it. And then it's
Chopped.
super easy. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I
All
have
right.
so much
Well,
holy
hey,
basil
that was,
right now. I'm gonna have Tulsi tea for 3 years.
you'll have what tea?
Tulsi, have you heard of Tulsi tea? It's
Uh-uh.
it's been on the market probably like the last year or two, but in Ayurveda and in India for centuries they've been drinking it. It's a very, very, like right now we would probably begin to incorporate more Tulsi into our diet. In the summertime, we eat the leaves raw, like maybe up to 6 leaves or so a day in the morning. But in the fall, we're getting into Vata season. So we're going to take advantage of all these different plants and things that are just kind of like in abundance and presenting themselves to us. So the Tulsi is Vata pacifying. Ashley too. Yes, Tulsi tea for you. It calms and it pacifies so Vata, all of the 3 doshas have 5 sub-doshas. And Vata, when you're pregnant, is really, really exaggerated in your body. All the energy, remember Vata goes in every direction. The energy flows everywhere. So that's what's happening when you get pregnant. Vata energy is all over the place. So a Tulsi tea, it really, really pacifies the whole nervous system, the digestive system, the prana. It's a holy basil. So the basil plants actually help create openness in the heart and in the lungs. So the holy basil, the Tulsi, has more of those like medicinal properties. So in the fall, when the wind is coming at us and the air is changing and the climate could be really warm one day and hot another day and freezing cold another day, dry up, that's all Vata disturbance. So now in the fall, we want to think of every way to pacify Vata as the fall starts to make its way into your climate.
It says the Tulsi tea is good for preventing respiratory illness too. So that'd be good with all this COVID craziness.
Absolutely. So I've been taking it since the spring, since the summer, since it came back. I drank the tea in the winter, but it came back in the summer in my garden. Once you plant it once, I think I probably said this story 40 times, but I was all disappointed and sad. I couldn't find it in the market like 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and I couldn't buy the plant. And I was literally almost crying because I had such an abundance of it the year before. And all of a sudden I looked out in my garden when little tomatoes were starting to come up, and the whole ground of it was covered in Tulsi seedlings. It had just reseeded itself from the year before. Now I have it all over the garden. It falls, the birds must be bringing it too for me and pooping it all over. It's showing up everywhere in my yard. It's really great. It's a wonderful, it's like chamomile. Once you plant chamomile, you'll just keep coming back. So it's got the same thing, but again, it's extremely beneficial for Vata season, someone with a very Vata constitution. And if you're pregnant, this Tulsi is just, it really is a Vata pacifying for every good reason. It's, the prana, everything, it's super, super beneficial. So
Amazon just ordered it.
good. And
Put it in the cart.
when you come down next time, I'll give you the fresh, or I can actually
Oh,
mail
nice.
you a little bit of the fresh. It dried, and you just take a little bit. And do you have like the tea bags where you can make your own tea, like just the
Yeah, I
bag?
actually right now I have my little tea holder brewing.
Yes. So you do that and just steep it for a while, and make a nice strong tea with it. And you technically, once it rehydrates itself, you can eat the leaves, because in the morning,
Okay.
in the summertime, you just eat the leaves like right out in the garden when you're like grabbing some things in the morning, or put it in your smoothie or whatever you happen to be doing. So, but this is another, so this habit is the plant-based diet, which is like, we're not vegan, we don't have to be purely vegetarian or anything like this. It's just confirming as we are reconfirming and reconfirming and reconfirming. And now, thank goodness, science is catching up with the importance, instead of, the standard American diet, the SAD diet. Thank God it was named that, because it's truly so sad. But the plant world is now being recognized, thank goodness, with all these neuroscientists and the functional medicine. Thank goodness that this has finally come about, this real live food is medicine movement, the functional medicine of like Jeffrey Bland and Dr. Mark Hyman. Like, these guys are brilliant, and they're sharing it with a huge loud voice. Now people are listening, and now all like world renowned cardiologists are starting to agree and understanding that our diet has really become the demise of our health, especially in the Western world. Our diet is horrendous, and what we're allowed to have approved by the FDA that are literally banned in other countries. Like, you're not allowed to have certain pesticides and growth hormones and all this in our food, and we're allowed to, or sometimes we turn the other cheek. Maybe they have more lobbyists for, depending on what it is. It's really horrendous how we're killing our own society and we're allowing it. But that's my little rant for a second. So, but that being said, so the plant world, we're just trying to get more of an awareness of introducing more of the plant world to our diet. And then, of course, the big why. Like, if, a lot of kids grow up, they're like, I don't like vegetables. I don't like any of that stuff. I don't. But introducing it at an early age, if you were lucky enough to grow up in a family where A, you just kind of ate what was on your plate, or B, you were kind of told why, or this was introduced to your palate at a very young age, you were lucky enough to have it normal. Or if you had a grandmother that just put stuff on your plate and that's kind of what you ate, or you didn't eat anything. But as we find out too, it's kind of fun. So as you learn your dosha and the other doshas within your household or your group of friends or whatever your little immediate circle is, you'll start to see like really cool things within the plant world that are more accepted on someone's palate, and really like someone else doesn't like those flavors or those tastes or those smells or whatever it may be. And the doshas will have a really big component in what your taste or what your body is asking for. So sometimes when we're in an imbalanced state, we actually crave more of what is not good for us. So say you're in a very high pitta pitta stage, out of balance pitta, you're gonna really want like spicy foods and just these more aggravating, because your body has become accustomed to having so much of it, and it's actually having this adverse effect on you where it's craving more. If you're very, very out of balance kapha, you want the sugars. You want the carbs and the sugars. They taste good. This is what you. But when we introduce the plant world, it's like this brilliant symbiotic back and forth that goes with us that helps us. Our palate will actually start to crave more of what it needs, like what we are in need of. And things will taste, especially with herbs, when we introduce the herbs into our diet, say you're just at the change of seasons and certain things, your body will understand what herbs, either by smelling them or just by lightly tasting them, what is beneficial. And sometimes if you taste something that's really, really bitter and you need this cleansing or this something, it will taste bitter and bitter and bitter as you're taking it. And then all of a sudden one day it might taste sweet. Your body has leveled out, it's had enough. You can stop taking that herb. So the plant world is not just we need to get more plants in or become vegetarian, or I'm going to become vegan now because I don't want to disturb, the animal world. It's that the plant world has intelligence. It knows how to work with the body. The body knows how to take things from the plant world, where to use it and how to use it. So it's really absolutely this like brilliant food source that was given to us by nature. As we look out, we are seeing this seasonal change now too. So we're coming out like we might have had a whole bunch of those summer vegetables were in abundance at our farmers market and our gardens all over. And now the gardens are depleting. I mean, mine looks like hell now. It's like completely, my tomatoes are dead and over gone, but there's a few things in there that are thriving. The root vegetables and the greens are starting to come back. So the chlorophyll in the greens is starting to come back to like get the prana going in a good, so it's that vata that we need, like that opening. People are going to start transitioning to inside. Germs are going to start being spread, especially now with COVID. COVID is, again, people are getting, at least they're getting more mildly sick this time. Someone in my family just was today diagnosed positive, another one. And so Vata's coming in, and now you'll start seeing all those root vegetables at the farmer's market. Like all the zucchinis are gone, all the fruits are kind of at their last. The apples are coming in. Believe it or not, the watermelons, some of those are staying still on because they're that vine that's going to take that whole summer to kind of like grow and create. The same with those, all your gourds and your different squashes, those fall squash. So they're going to start giving us that grounding energy. They're going to start bringing us down because that vata is going to wreak havoc on us. We don't understand it. We think, oh, we just, got back into work again after a fun summer of, staying up late and doing this, or the kids all started school and they're all just, it just coincides exactly with fall. And that's when the energy is really like spinning crazy all around us. But we didn't know why. We didn't equate it with anything but, oh, it's a new season of, work and school and all this. But it really is that vata season. So if you look around and you see what is in the plant world right now that's in abundance that's coming to us, it's the earth. Depending on where you live, in this hemisphere or in another hemisphere, you're coming into spring. But what's out there in the world is, in the plant world, is what you're supposed to be taking in to nourish you and to get you set for that season. Again, that's why this perfect time, I think it's about 10 days we start our cleanse. And we're going to do this, gracefully again, like the spring, we were taking things out. All those greens were there to like expel and get rid of the winter. Now we're going to start getting the system and the nervous system calm down and set in for winter. So again, the plant world is going to be right there to assist us. So if we look at the different parts of the plant, I know we've gone through this a few times. So like if we're kind of good with this, we can pass right by this. But the intelligence of the plant is really pretty brilliant. So first the seed hits and the moisture and the sun and all that. So the 5 elements are also involved with even the whole plant process from seed to sprout to flowers to back to seed, like the whole cycle. So we're bringing in all of the elements. So the sun and the wind and the rain, that's going to set up the seeds. Seeds are going to sprout. They're going to need the rain. They're going to need the sun, and they're going to need the air. And then they're going to start exchanging the air and the carbon monoxide and the oxygen flow. So all this nitrogen, but all 5 elements, the sun is the fire element. We have the air, we have the ether, the space for it to grow. We got the ground, the soil that's going to nourish it. But the plants are really brilliant. We are completely depleting our soils, monocropping and just the pesticides and all of the way we're genetically modifying and what we're doing. We've completely almost eradicated our topsoil. It's pretty much gone in all of, like, our agricultural areas, and even in our backyards, in our own plant world, we're having to give so many more fertilizers to our soil to add in. It's like a very depleted body that just lives on vitamin supplements instead of taking in that natural. The soils used to be really, really complete with nutrient dense and its own full microbiome, and it's now completely like devoid of all of these nutrients. So if we are going to use the plant world, and remember when we talked about the weeds, the invasive weeds, the roots go down so deep, they're tapping in way into where the nutrients still are. And then the tap roots grow and they actually go in there. They can store up the energy from that photosynthesis and the rain and the soil, and they'll hold it in there. And then they either feed it. So the trees and the plants under the ground in the soil actually communicate and feed off of each other. They actually give nutrients back and forth within each other. One might have more nutrient dense something, the other, and they all kind of live together in harmony under here, feeding each other, but the topsoil is depleted. So as these weeds and these other plants that have the longer root system, they're pulling up some nutrients for that, defecated topsoil, and then they actually kind of compost down and then give the soil back some nutrient. So some of the weeds, somewhere you kind of want to leave them and help that they, feed your soil. But so the plant-based diet is really, we're being fooled. We're like really being, bamboozled here with, yes, eat more plants, eat more of the, a vegetarian diet, but we're really getting bad produce. We're getting bad food. The monocropping that is being done in, thousands of acres of soy or corn, or even our vegetables, they're being fed vitamins and things rather than naturally getting all these. We need the microbiome to feed our systems. As we talked last week, the microbiome, or 2 weeks ago, is in our skin and it's everywhere, but the plants are what are giving us that diversity. So if there's a way to find, organic is even better, but if you could find someone that has like a regenerative kind of like a soil management, that's like the ultimate. If you can find that, if you can find a really local farmer that's doing this with composting and adding their own topsoil, that's the most perfect world. But adding that wisdom from a plant, or if you say you do eat meat, or say you do eat chicken or whatever it is, I mean, the grass-fed free range that are out there moving, they're eating a bunch of different plants that are wildly out there just growing in nature. And the animal kingdom knows to eat diverse, like you won't see them only eating, grass that we planted in a pasture for, like our cows and our horses and things. They eat the grass that we plant, and that's kind of it. They're stuck with that. But when they're free range and kind of able to move around, they're eating this crazy diversity of plants that they actually know instinctively which plants have what nutrients to them, and they're eating little bits of all of this, and then they're ingesting it, and that's the most natural. And then it's going into their system. So when you're eating that kind of a meat or a chicken or a poultry of some sort, you're getting all that extra plant benefit in their muscle tissue into your body. So you actually sometimes are getting more nutrition from a really high grade, free range, whatever you're eating, pig, cow, bison, the buffalo, whatever it is, elk. you're actually sometimes getting more of a nutrient dense microbiome diversity in you than eating some kind of just vegan or just plant worlds, from bad soil or something. So you have to kind of weigh vegetarian, it's adding more plants in. So it's any way you can get more of the plant world in. That's the intelligence the plants carry, all of the phytonutrients, which we need more of, and feeding the microbiome. We need that diverse, taking some plants and fermenting them and having them on all different levels. Um, it's just amazing what intelligence that like our cells understand what the plant world is giving us. That's where the real intelligence in our body comes from, is from the plant world. So instead of like a lot of people get stuck, which I'm sure I did for the longest time, like you eat salads, but you kind of after a while you make the same salad. And you make a soup and you really like it, and you wind up making like the same soup. And so you get kind of stuck. Maybe you eat 10 vegetables total in your kind of like in your vegetable repertoire is maybe carrots and broccoli and lettuce and tomatoes or whatever it may be. So if you can sometimes like experiment, you go into the say you just went into Whole Foods right now and you go to that nice little local organic section and rutabagas are there, or turnips are now coming out, or parsnips, and beets are different. Like try different ones. There's even different varieties of beets, like the striped ones, the golden ones, the red ones. But experiment with trying some things maybe you never tasted before. And of course, now we can come up with any recipe available because we just Google it. Like, how do you cook that? How do you do that? What's a neat way to prepare that?
Yeah,
So
and Deb, I'm having on steroids right now, being pregnant, because I want the same thing ever. Like, I feel so bad. People are nice and more like, I'll be craving something, and then the next day, like my husband or Casey or whoever will be like, "Oh, we know you liked this. We brought it." I'm like, "Oh, that was so yesterday. I don't want that again." Like, I feel like every day my body wants something completely different and like specific. It's like, no, we need orange juice today. No, we need beets today. No, we need this. It's like cinnamon, like cinnamon. I was dying for cinnamon the past 2 days. Like anything cinnamon I can get my hands on, that's what I wanted. It's
that's
just so,
circulation. Cinnamon helps your circulation. So it's
oh yeah.
probably, yeah, your body's probably feeling that, like that change of season and all, and that, so that will warm you up and get circulation. And maybe she's kind of moving around and needs a little bit more something, so that it's that cinnamon time of year.
Yeah, so funny. And it's just so funny because your body starts telling you like all these little things it needs. It's like so specific. It's wild.
It is really, really specific. And then you feel badly because you'll say like, or if you really, really want something so specific and you can't get it, or no one wants to do it for you, you're like, I'm gonna cry.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's come that before closely. Yes.
Oh yeah, that'll keep happening. That'll keep happening for a while. You'll be like, no, 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 you don't understand. You have to get this for me or I might cry.
Yeah.
So those old stories of like running out to, the corner grocery store for that ice cream or something, they're true.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah.
They're true stories. Yes, 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 yes. So has anyone noticed anything? So are you going to the farmer's market? Are you seeing like that transition of all those summer things coming into now, like the beautiful root vegetables and the daikons and tomatoes? Some of the tomatoes are hanging in there. Um, Ground cherries are still, has anyone tried a ground cherry? We've been having those all summer. They're a cross between like a tomato family, but they look like they're in a little tomatillo, like that little wrap, and they have a sweetness to them. So they're called ground cherries, but they're filled with vitamin C, like packed with vitamin C. So different things are going to start coming into. So I really encourage you to look at it and notice like what's really different. I know everybody now, thank goodness, there are farmers markets everywhere, and some of them are Saturday, some of them Saturday and Sunday. So you get, whichever day, and kind of check out the real local. Maybe there's a local organic, and you can tell these people have their hands in the dirt all the time, and they know what they're doing. And all of the produce is like the furthest thing from perfect. They're like different shapes and different sizes, and try all the different things out and try different ways. So there's other ways to get the plant world in too, is also adding spices. So we're going to start adding all those fall spices and kind of getting our circulation, getting the body warm if you happen to be, a cooler, Vata kind of a person. And now that the Vata season is going to start coming in on us, the body might want to have some ginger and some cinnamon, some cardamom, a little bit of clove for cleansing, different things. Like just think of apple pie and pumpkin pie, like what's in those, that's what the fall is all about. And it's for a reason. It's to keep our circulation moving, it's to keep us warm, it's to keep things kind of moving. I have stuff all over. My brain was on fire before because I love this topic, and I've been really studying functional medicine recently, like a lot of it, and is going into a few different classes from before, and it's amazing the amount of history back when you look into medical records of Eastern world philosophy, that this knowledge has been there. It's documented, it's been written down, it's practiced. And now we're just getting to the point where we're like, hey, you know what? There's this new thing out there. And these different plant worlds are really like, hey, did you know that they can like cure cancer or help you through every single disease on the planet? And Eastern world must be just going like this. Oh, thank goodness they're finally getting it. Like it's just it's not even funny anymore that what we have allowed like big pharma to do, which is, I get it, definitely needed. Like we have to have certain things, but you also should be taught like, hey, how's your diet and lifestyle? Like how are you living day to day? Are you adding to this? Are you feeding do you know what your microbiome is? Are you taking, exercise classes for fun and for enjoyment and for health? Or are you paying attention to, but we're really not. We're like, as a society, we're just too busy going in other directions rather than coming in a little bit. So one of the teachings I was listening to the other night, so we went into a couple weeks ago with the autophagy and the apoptosis and all that. So we have microbiome all over in our body. The skin is one of the most important to pay attention to because you can take in so much of the skin. But internally, within our gut, within our stomach biome, our microbiome, they're starting to find, so people that were really, really, really void and seriously ill, say, I think it was 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, the only way they were starting to realize that people that had really, really good microbiome, like gut health, and were actually able to overcome disease and things within their own body, that you can do a fecal test to find out how sick you are or what you're void in material, as in your vitamins, your minerals, all of your, micronutrients and all this. So your fecal sample will tell this. So some people who were super, super sick and had no help pharmaceutical, basically when you get to that point, they kind of say you're stage 4 or whatever this is. But they were starting to play around with it now. Thank goodness it's not really practiced, but it is a thing. Curing, where some people who have super, super healthy microbiome can actually do a fecal implant to another person to feed their microbiome, because the colon will, ingest everything and absorb everything so quickly that sometimes coming in that direction rather than going through digestion. So, but then they finally looked in and said, okay, but why is his microbiome and his gut so good and so healthy? Let's reverse engineer this a little bit. So we can look into our own selves, because the most important part of our health now we're finally getting to understand is our microbiome. That has to be healthy to be able to be disease-free, beat disease, overcome disease, prevent disease. And there's about 25,000, I think, phytonutrients in the plant food. And that's there to protect us. I mean, you can heal leaky gut and all these different things, but they're finding like a few really particular, like now becoming like the superfoods. These polyphenols are one really, really great one that you have to have in your gut to help really, it helps with the lining of the system, but it also keeps feeding the really good bacteria and the bugs in your stomach, is that Akkermansia, which you can find in pomegranate, cranberry, green tea, different things like this that actually feed you want to take some foods that feed those particular bugs within your, your microbiome within your gut to get a really strong, healthy gut. So if we look into it now from the back door, if we can figure out how to keep each one of us personally, introducing different phytonutrients and things from all the different plant world options into our microbiome, that's how you stay healthy. That's how you keep preventing or being able to overcome some kind of a virus or whatever that's come in. So say the COVID virus comes into your system or comes in, and we're already aware now of what the autophagy is and this apoptosis. So now we know that we have strong cells that are going to go out and kind of encapsulate these bacteria and viruses. They do it all day long. So if we're keeping down on our fat and keeping the cells themselves intellectually, going with wisdom from the plant world, they're strong enough and they have the space to keep going in all day long. That's their job. They're going to go in and they're going to find these viruses and things, and they're going to take them and they're going to like kind of engulf them, take them, then spit out the bad, and then the bad goes back into the system, into the digestion to be removed. So the plant world is help. This is what feeds this whole process. If we're eating carbs and sugars and processed foods and all of this constantly, we're just spiking, of course, our blood sugar levels. So then our insulin goes up, and then we become insulin completely resistant, and everything, gets out of whack. And that's where disease sets in. So introducing as much as you can of the plant world in this diverse, and we can look up, there's a ton of different information now that it's becoming more like, what are really good polyphenols, or what are really good different micronutrients and things that we need right now, and what plants are best for them, and then kind of find. So like pomegranates, cranberries, green tea are super easy right now, because coming into the fall, all those cranberries are going to be coming, aside from, don't get the ocean spray like ones that have been completely killed with every probably pesticide known to man, but there are a couple local farmers that you can find the cranberry, amazingly healthy for you for the fall and into the winter. So just having fun, like kind of introducing this like concept that the more we feed our body with intelligence, and the more we're doing our intermittent fasting or starting to like give that circadian rhythm its balance, all this starts to get into balance and starts to like settle things in for us, and the health starts. You'll start to see your skin looks better, your hair looks better, because the micronutrients are getting absorbed, because we have a better microbiome within our gut. And that lining, we want that, like that it's Salacia kapha. So that's one of the kapha, the subdoshas, which is there to lubricate. And we want that lining, because all that acid goes into our stomach on purpose to break things down and do, but you want a nice kind of fluid lining to protect the lining. That all comes from the microbiome. That all comes from those good bugs and those two kind of producing this nice little layer for us. So it's a lot to think about, and we don't think about it because we're not told these things. But when you know them, you kind of become a little bit more aware, like, all right, am I going to eat that, or am I going to eat that? Like, you can eat that really great juicy snack of something that was processed to taste absolutely amazing, like maybe once a month, have it as a treat. But to have those things every single day is like, it really breaks down the intelligence of our body, which immediately breaks down the intelligence of our brain. Because all this inflammation, these inflammatory foods that we eat that spike our blood sugar, and then our insulin goes up, it immediately starts creating a barrier of inflammation between what they call like the frontal lobe is like our adult in the room, like that's the that's the adult in the classroom, and then the reptilian brain in the back is that fight or flight, flee, go, have fun, be crazy, do whatever. And as we eat this inflammatory diet, we create a barrier, literal barrier between the front and the back of our brain, and we start dealing from the reptilian brain only, And that's when we're in like chaos and we're not organized and we're anxious or we're angry or we're worried. And as we start to reduce the inflammation in our body, it reduces in our brain. And then all of a sudden we start to calm down and we can think better and we can process better. And we have, you know, you can sit and take things in and you're not as reactive to things. So it's this beautiful like dance that has to go on intelligently between yourself, your lifestyle, and your diet. And, you know, the plant world is really here. It's everywhere and it's here for us to take in and it's here for us to use and, you know, take full advantage of, to not dull the body down. You know, we say there's like live food, there's intelligent food, and then there's dumb food, and then there's dull food. There's like no food. So there's, you know, and then there's foods that have prana and they're sattvic. They're totally nourishing and they're like completely balanced. And then we have that rajasic food, and that's to energize or to get things moving, and then you have that like that inertia, that dull nothing food that is just like it almost shouldn't even be in your diet, but it is. So certain foods like that. But we do some of those foods, like mushrooms, sometimes dull the system down. But sometimes you need things like that. Sometimes if you're in a very rajasic or kind of a anxious state, you might need some grounding, dull, kind of calm the system down. So outside of the plant world, you're really not going to find all these effects on the body aside from in a negative way, in that inflammatory response or in that sugar spike or in that too much fat, like processed fats. Like we have, as we're going to do in the cleanse, and as we get into the fall and the winter, we're going to start adding more fats in. We're going to add really good fats that are going to help feed our tissue and help feed our brains. So avocado, olive oil, really good olive oils. We can use coconut oil, our nuts, the seeds, all these different layers. They're going to give oil to us. They're going to give us a balance of our omega-3s and the 6s and just really feed the brain, especially you, Ashley, right now, as you go into you want to start feeding those good oils to your, you know, your body just to feed, you know, the baby's development. And at the same time, things are going to start being depleted from you. So you want to make sure you keep your balance up. And within calorie intake, so when you're pregnant, like we're not really told a guideline, but you really only need when you're pregnant, like 250 more calories a day. And then when you're breastfeeding, it's about 500. But it's kind of like carte blanche. Oh, I'm pregnant. I can eat whatever. But sometimes that's like kind of, I mean, it's weight also, but it also interferes with like just that beauty of the baby taking all the good things that are needed and you replenishing it back with good nourishing, like that real vata pacifying, warm, heavy, you know, moist, oily kind of foods. So instead of trying to concentrate on losing weight and eating salads and raw, you know, vegetables and things, you want to kind of nourish and kind of put some nice spices on and feel like that warm, cozy blanket. Like you want that kind of feeling in your food. But there will be days when maybe you're feeling too dense or too something. Then you'll listen to your intuition and eat something lighter if you want, or eat something. And if you're not really hungry or whatever, don't eat. Like your body's telling you, maybe I had enough for right now or something. Like really listen to, you know, what it's telling you. Anyone have any questions so far? I know there's a ton of information. We don't have to get into, you know, balancing. We went through it, I think, on another with the sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and pungent. Like in this, I was going to say spring. In the fall, we're going to want to get to the sweet, the sour, and the salty. So we want digestion to happen. We're going to try to get this heat of the summer out of us. If we hold on to that heat, and the heat comes from every aspect to us in the summertime, if we hold on to it, we actually carry that heat in us and it comes out in aggravation and anger and kind of like almost a resentment feeling. We have to shed that. We have to get it out of us. And that's what the fall cleanse does. It gets this out of it and it starts to bring that energy like in and down again, instead of that fire up and out. where we had the longer days, we had the sunny days, we had the sun coming in on us, and we want to kind of disperse that. We want to let that heat out and bring in, that warm grounding kind of a feeling. And it's amazing how if you let it and you eat the certain foods and great combinations of things, how the body will just cool down. It's really, we'll pay attention to it in the cleanse, but it'll be really pretty neat to go through the
It's-
fall cleanse and compare it to the spring.
Interesting to me how completely opposite this recommended diet is than everything that the American Medical Association teaches.
Yep.
I mean, it's like, have 3 meals a day and 2 snacks, and make sure you have a big breakfast. Eat lots of carbs and be real. It's just really hard to get your mind around.
Oh, yeah. But if you go into research, and now it's different, studies and things are coming out, who was really behind the message of this, and what big companies, and what was like forcing, and actually the milk and the dairy industry for our farmers and agriculture after the war, and where this all came driven from, and where the food pyramid got changed into. And it's really amazing when you see what force and what focus, who brought this to come out. And now if you go back into and you ask more of these functional medicine doctors, and ones that are actually starting to heal people naturally of many, many different diseases and like imbalances in the body, they're really getting back online with my screen right now is so funny. The bottom of my screen has the Zoom background with 2 skinny legs hanging out. And then the top of it is Laura's plant. So it looks like I have a turkey with 2 little skinny legs coming out on my screen. And it's like walking around. I'm like, what is that? It's really funny. Okay.
Yeah, I can see the top of my head and the plant behind me.
Yeah, it's right there. So
Yeah, the hard, Laura, with that type of stuff, when I hear, like, it like breaks my heart for like learning all the things that we learned. When I hear people like, oh, I'll have low fat milk, and like, oh, I want, this like carb conscious tortilla. I'm like, oh God, I'm like, it's just all processed garbage in that tortilla that you think is good for you. It's
it's
like
like giving you lard.
different like label things. Then like low fat milk, it's just like all sugar, garbage, hormones. It's just like,
And it's
But
the
that-
processes to make those foods that way. That's even the real detriment to our body, is how brilliant our machinery came to extract everything out of a product so we can put back into the product what we want to call it and put into it, and then we consume it. And we're told this is really good for you, do this. And we're like, oh, okay, it says vitamin D, A, and E right on it, so I should eat it. But the process of killing it, burning it, stripping it, bleaching it, and using chemicals to do all this, and then they enrich it, and they put big bold words, it's enriched with vitamins and minerals. You're like, all right, I'm going to give this to my kids. You just fed them the most crazy, stripped, genetically modified thing in the world, and the body's going, I don't know what this is, so I'm going to store it over here. And then you've got little girls getting their period at 9. You've got little obese, boys running and girls running around the fields that they're so inflamed that how many little boys and girls, more so boys than girls, have ADD, ADHD? Their brains are inflamed. They're on like fake food. Everything is prepared, microwave, frozen, and it's convenient. But it's killing the whole systems of these little kids. And then they get into puberty, and then their body doesn't know what to do because every hormone in their body is completely off balance. There's no, they're actually, sometimes the kids they're getting to the point where their hormones aren't even reacting at a right age and a correct age. And it's really disturbing because a lot of kids, you can't handle emotions of different things until you're ready. And things are happening too early. And it's really, it's almost a crime what we're doing and what we're allowed to do, and that are completely illegal and banned in other countries, and we're allowed to do it. And we're allowed to like do this modifications to our food. And so if you can travel abroad, taste all their really good healthy food and enjoy it. But yeah, so this is really it's very, very disturbing to me. I mean, thank goodness I kind of grew up. My mom was a little bit more healthy, but my mom also grew up to that age of like, oh, but it's a real vegetable in a can, and it was just canned, but it was
Yeah,
canned and it's in there, and there's like
in there,
there's like no life force left in there. But living with my grandmother for all these years, she grew up all natural. The produce truck came down the lane. They owned a dairy farm, like the chickens and everything were right there, and the fish came right up to the port. And so all that was we had a very my grandmother taught me all these great recipes and how to do things right from scratch from a real piece of a plant or something. And so then my kids were able to have a little bit more of a holistic upbringing. Not that they didn't eat Doritos and ice cream, all that stuff was given, but just in special and moderation. And then, so if we can kind of get back to that, the intelligence of our body needs the plant world to feed that intelligence. And the healthier choices that we find within the plant world, the healthier our body's going to be. And our blood sugars are going to stay lower, which means our insulins are not going to spike, which means our pancreas is going to be really happy and it's going to be able to do its job. And the lubrication of our joints, like all of this is done through the plant world. So again, it's not like you have to be vegan, you have to be vegetarian, you have to choose the better grade, meats and fish, even fish, like some of the fish is really sourced in horrible areas. And these soaks, got to look at some of the organic farms. Some of those aren't even that great. So some of the wild caught fish, you know, depending on where you get it caught, but are even better than some of these organic farms, because some of the organic farms, they're not, they're they're just not maintained the way nature, like water flows and the fish can. So we kind of, it's kind of sad, but we really have to be careful of where we're getting our food from and being aware of what we're putting in our bodies. And of course, it doesn't have to be every single day, all day long, but the more you do this, the better things will happen within your body and the healthier things will stay in your brain. I mean, especially Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, like MS, all these different things. These are mainly diet and lifestyle and functionalities of our own balances in our system that are just diseased or either just inflamed or the messages are not getting across. We have to have those cells free and open to send the messages the way that they're supposed to go. And when we really disturb this or we're not aware to keep these channels open and healthy, this is where we almost self-sabotage our own health and our own well-being. But for the longest time, unknowingly, like we were told these food sources were very good. Like we should eat this particular one because it was injected with a whole bunch of extra nutrients. And you're like, but wait a second, why didn't it have it to begin with? It's supposed to be there. So we're lucky enough, I think we're coming to the point where we know now that there's a better source, and we know now that we can go to a different, and it could be, you know what, you could save a ton of money too, because when you eat more plants, you eat less food, kind of, because they're bulkier, or you're getting more of a filling rather than paying more money for all of these processed, packaged, maybe frozen different things that are easy. You pop them in the microwave, but a lot of times your food bill goes down if we do a little bit of a food prep, or we do our like little meal shopping list of what we really need. You start to, all of that excess food that maybe you just wanted to buy or bought because it looked appealing in the wrapper. If you start cutting all that out, like your food bill goes down considerably. If you start prepping it and eating easier, lighter meals, or maybe you spend a little bit more on a grass-fed buffalo or something for somewhere to try it. But then if you eat it with a couple of vegetables, the vegetables cost like nothing. So it's a nice balance where you can actually save money in your food bill, and then having your spices ready, things like that that you've taken in from the garden from the summer, like all this, you begin to actually start saving money, and you save time because you can prep a little bit and you can have it for 2 or 3 meals or a day, day and a half. You know, we're able to keep prana and life force alive in food because we have refrigeration, or we can, kind of prep things and have them ready and have them available for a few days. But the intelligence within the plant world for healing and feeding a microbiome and reversing disease or preventing disease, or as we know, using for makeup and skin products and all this is it can be really fun to investigate, and it can be life changing and life saving if we really put our mind to it. So any questions? I mean, we're going to start making our way through detox in, I think it's not this coming week, but it's the next week, and we'll start to pull some of these things out of our diet, which I think we're already starting to do. We're going to exchange, I have a whole bunch of new fun recipes for this. And again, we are not going to starve. We're going to be really intelligent about it, but we're going to go deep into different kinds of processes for our body, and maybe we'll even challenge ourselves a little bit with some intermittent fasting kind of ins and outs with Ashley. You can benefit from this too if you really start to regulate the times of day when you feel hungry or depleted, and then there's other times when you're just not, and you might just want to have a really intelligent, like high fat snack or something. Maybe you're just not hungry and you just want a little bit of an avocado with pumpkin seeds or something. Like you could have something that little, or avocado and sauerkraut, like something really strange, but that's really good for your system. But because you're pregnant and maybe
Sauerkraut.
it's really good, you have to try it.
I'm making homemade sauerkraut for the first time.
Nice.
Excellent.
Yeah. I had to go out and buy the pickling salt and, the mustard seed and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
Oh,
Yum.
so good. So during the cleanse, if you make it and you have your liquid, we can add some turmeric and different things like that. And you can do some gut shots, and that will help. Like the turmeric is heating, but it's heating, and then the post-digestion is cooling. So that will fire things up, but cool things down as they go out. And things like that. You can do gut shots and different things with certain ingredients in them to do certain things to the body.
That sounds
So-
good. Maybe I should make some sauerkraut.
is this like putting like Jägermeister in mixing Jägermeister with the
In a beer, right? Oh, yeah, the sauerkraut, yes.
sauerkraut juice?
Yeah.
Body shots, I mean, yeah, or
There
gut
you
shots,
go.
whatever you call them.
Yes.
I love
So no,
it.
honestly, what are you suggesting, that when you eat the sauerkraut that you hold on to the liquid that's in the jar and then you just like do shots of that?
Yeah, you can do shots of that on an empty stomach. So we're talking about microbiome and all that too. So if someone which you don't have a like a vata or a kapha digestion, you have more of that pitta digestion. But someone of a vata digestion that's very erratic, and sometimes it's dry and sometimes it's not. A vata person does very, very well having what they call like a little bit of an appetizer before their meal, and that actually starts the fire going in their stomach. And that would be sauerkraut juice, different things like beet juice, like you've made the pickling things, kimchi, stuff like that, a slice of ginger with the lime and the salt, something to start the fire going in your gut, which is really, really good for you.
Yeah, sauerkraut actually sounds good.
Yes, sauerkraut I had this week twice already, and kimchi.
Kimchi, I bought kimchi and I had to throw it away. I couldn't even look at it.
Yeah,
Just
too much.
That's just one of those things that it was just like, oh God, no, get that out of here.
So yeah, in the cleanse, we'll do some fun things like that. Like you'll get to the point where you'll challenge yourself a little bit. Like, am I really hungry, or is the clock telling me I'm supposed to be eating?
Mm-hmm.
So you start listening to like, do I have enough space and air? Do I feel empty enough to where my brain feels active? kind of like that feeling for a little bit more. Maybe I'll just do a little gut shot, or maybe I'll just do something to get something going. And you'll find out that it didn't kill you, and you're not going to starve to death. And you actually cleansed one more tiny little layer of something out. You let the body kind of get stuff going in a heated way. So it's fun to really challenge. It could be a half hour, like, oh, it's 12:30 and that's when I eat. I'm going to wait till 1 o'clock and see if I can, or whatever, time. And you kind of just press it a little bit more in the cleanse to see. But you don't want your blood sugars to spike, and you don't want to like set yourself going. But if you feel it for a couple minutes, 10 minutes, 15, a half hour, and drink a little bit of water, you're letting your body go for a couple more of those viruses and bacteria, and they're going to go after a couple more cells, and they're going to take those bad cells and they're going to rinse them out of your body. But if you keep eating, that process stops. So again, being pregnant, you don't want to feel, Ashley, where you've hit the threshold where you're going a little bit too long. Then you want to eat something like nourishing and good and grounding. But if you're really not hungry and you're just eating because the doctor said you should eat it this time, give it a few extra minutes, and maybe the baby's going to pull really good, healthy fat from you. And that's pure gold for her. You want to feed her that little bits of fat and stuff all throughout your body, because that's pure gold food. Like, that's fuel. So
Yeah, I'm intrigued to start the cleanse and to do it, because like dinner for me, like I've been eating dinner, but then I feel really tired and I feel weighed down. Like I'm not really hungry for dinner. I'm just eating dinner, and like heavier than I had been eating, frankly, for dinner.
Yeah. So let's try this transition
I have to make
into soups.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be great. Cause like I've
Already
just been
almost
feeling very
digested.
like blah at night.
You'll feel once you start going through the cleanse a little bit, that dinner, if you've had your lunch, that dinner it doesn't almost feel appetizing. Like you only want a soup, or maybe some steamed vegetables, something that's going to be light, and you're going to say like, all right, I don't want to feel full. I want to just fill up, or I want to eat a little bit.
Just have something. Totally.
So that we'll experiment with all that stuff, but we're going to kind of have an idea, maybe in the next week, come up with some things, like maybe your brain is starting to like crave a particular plant or food or something. When you go to the farmer's market, pick it out and try it, and then Google a recipe. And then when we have class next week, I'll set up a couple that I've done in the last 2 weeks. I've done a couple really great recipes, just made them up with the farmer's market stuff, and they really tasted good, and they were really like kind of nourishing and that really satisfying. So we'll send a few of those back and forth to each other, and we'll maybe add the lighter ones to our cleanse.
Nice.
So whatever's at your farmer's market this weekend, kind of investigate and pick up a few different things and see what's there. And if you talk to the farmers and you ask them questions, or what was in, or what field, how do you do that, or how do you suggest, they want to tell you information. They want to kind of help you, and they get enthused when you're kind of interacting with them. So you can go back and forth with them on some, well, how does that grow, and what family is that in, and what does it taste like, and how do I cook that? So, and then you get a little rapport going with them. Then you say, so next year, can you bring some of your weeds with you? Like, what do you have? What weeds grow in your yard that you're just trying to get rid of? Especially the organic farmers aren't going to kill those weeds. They're just going to pull them out. You're like, hey, so can you bring them our way?
It's so funny.
Yeah. We have all the dandelions and stuff coming back now too. So if you have dandelions in your yard, and you have not, killed them with pesticide, the flowers, you'll just see the leaves now, but not really the flowers. But now is when you want to pull the root out. So in the spring, we're eating the flower and the greens. That's the light, but now the cleansing of the bitter root, that's what's going to do like that real good cleanse, and that like kind of a nourishing effect on the body, rather than the extracting of the flower and the greens. So now we can dry the root and make dandelion tea out of it and stuff too. But it's really, you can even take the root out and wash it off and just chew on the root. Amazing. That bitter flavor. It's really, really good. It actually has a sweetness to it. I think we went over everything. I did send in the email, there's a couple really good videos to watch and to listen to, a couple podcasts with I think there's Mark Hyman and Dr. William Lee. And I think I sent you again, like Knife Over Forks, and there was 2 more videos that were really good. I think the last one was on cholesterol, heart disease, different things like that, and how high blood pressure, especially going to more of a plant-based diet, has like completely set these people, like they no longer have high cholesterol, blood pressure, all of these issues that were hereditary. They were born with it, it's in the family, all of this, and they've completely cured themselves. So that one's a really good one. It's in the email.
Awesome. Check that out.
So when you're talking about a plant-based diet, I mean, does that mean you're not supposed to eat any meats or seafoods at all?
No. So remember I said in the beginning, it doesn't mean that at all. People are like, oh, no, but I'm not vegetarian. It's the better sources of meat that you can find. Most of them, like if you find a wild sourced fish, that fish is mainly eating plants and plankton and seaweed and all
Right.
that. So
All
when
right,
you
all
eat
right.
it, you're getting that. And when you get a free range, say you like just cattle or bison or, the buffalo, everybody loves that free range. They're out eating the diversity of the plant world. Now you're getting that different within you when you eat the meat. So I'm saying where you're sourcing your meat from, if it's feedlot, it's the worst thing you can do for you. I mean, poor society that can't afford like better and don't have the quality, and they just eat those feedlot, like a million Purdue chickens in a little cage, and they're all, I mean, it's almost harmful to your body to eat those because they're eating monocrop corn and everything else that is like genetically modified and just given to them to bulk up and fat up. But if you're lucky enough to be able to find a real free range chicken that is given grain and can eat seeds and bugs and everything else, then you're getting that benefit from that animal into you. So if you're lucky enough to be able to get a better sourced meat, you can eat as much, meat or whatever you feel in your diet, but adding more plants and more diverse, and maybe cut down on a tiny bit of the portion of meat and adding more of those, vegetables, any bit of the plant world, which is grains and potatoes and seeds, and all of that is plant world. It's not just greens, broccoli and cauliflower and all that. Anything you can think that grows in a plant world is part of the plant world, like in a plant form rather. So it's everything. It's like seeds and grains and nuts, even the cereal grains and things like that. They're all part of the plant world. All of the seaweeds, all the algae, like even all your superfoods, all that stuff, that's all plant world. So it's basically whole food, like real foods. But the more plants you can keep, maybe once a week, you add one more bit of plant world into your diet. Say you were a person that ate bigger portion of meat, then you always had your potato or whatever, and then you were forced to eat that vegetable. Now maybe eat a little more vegetables, a little less of the starch, and a little bit less of the meat. You kind of slowly introduce maybe a little bit more of the plant. If you make pancakes, maybe find a really good buckwheat pancake flour or something, rather than white Aunt Jemima pancake mix that comes already in it.
I just found some coconut flour that I bought.
I use it for baking. Really, really good. So things like that, if you can kind of like introduce, if you're going to bake cupcakes, there's like I made pumpkin muffins this week, and I made them with spelt flour and a whole grain, in a whole wheat, like an actual grain wheat flour. They were delicious with the pumpkin, but there was no white flour in it. And I used coconut sugar. And they tasted just like pumpkin muffins. I used maple syrup, a little bit on the top and stuff. So they were definitely sweet, but they had no white flour or white processed sugar in them. So it's easy things like that. That's adding more of the plant world in rather than processed white sugars and flours. So that little bit added more plant into your diet. So that's what it means by the plant-based diet. It's just adding more plant choices of a healthy manner into our diet. Right. If you have any questions, or just shoot me an email, or any like fun recipes, or you want to know some, I probably have I have a million recipes, or I kind of start, which we can have fun in the cleanse. I just kind of start with ingredients. I'll look in the refrigerator, or all my produce comes out from the market or in the garden, and I just put it together, and I'm like, what can we make out of this? Like, what do we feel like? And you just create it. You have your spices ready, your oils ready, or whatever, and you just start chopping or thinking. And
You got a good like cauliflower soup recipe? I've got a head of
With pepper.
cauliflower.
With pepper, really, really good, like with red peppers.
Okay.
So just take your cauliflower in a big pot, and you can just chop it up. If you have vegetables, you can make your own vegetable broth too, with the onions, carrots, and celery, whatever in there. And then if you want to take them out, or if you want to blend it all up and make your own broth, and I add a little bit of ginger, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of oil in the beginning when I'm sauteing it, put the water in. And I always add like one little chili pepper of some sort. I have those Thai chilies. If you want a jalapeno, with like whatever you like, just a tiny bit. And then I add red pepper, like from the garden, red or yellow if you have red or yellow, that sweetness to it. So simple. And you put them, sometimes actually you can do it both ways, in the pot, or roast them on a roasting pan, and then put them in your pot and put them in with a blender. So simple.
So you use, after all of that stuff is cooked, all you do is stick an immersion blender in there, and the the cauliflower will just
Yep.
break up.
It's delicious. If you want to add salt or pepper or any other spices to it, between the ginger and the garlic, and having the pepper, and you don't really even need it. A
Okay.
little bit of salt and pepper if you want.
All right. Because I got a head of cauliflower in there that needs to be used, and I was like, okay,
You can roast it again, like if you want, roast it, and then take all those roasted vegetables. And if you have a really good organic vegetable broth, you put them in your either immersion blender or whatever, and then the roasted flavor tastes really good too. You just roast them on a baking sheet, dump them into a food processor or your blender or whatever with your vegetable broth, hit
Mhm.
blend, or your immersion blender. And it's that simple, and it tastes delicious. I roast everything in for the heck of it, and then I throw it in my blender with coconut milk or my vegetable broth or whatever, and I hit blend, and I have a beautiful soup, and it's done in like no time. I do it all the time. And
Okay.
whatever root vegetables or vegetables I have in there, I fill the big baking sheet up completely, and then I do the blender.
Okay. All right. Well,
All right, ladies.
About a try.
All right.
Thanks, ladies. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Yes, and try some good recipes and see what's at the farmer's market, and we'll chat next week about it.
Totally.
All right.
Sounds good. Thanks a
good
lot,
day.
Yvonne. Have a good week.
Yes,
Bye.
have a good time.